Yes or no? Do you hear me?
Yes, sir. For me, I can hear you, sir.
Uh, you are. Did you get your results from the exam? From the
Yeah, I
micro?
did get it. Yeah, I did get it. But I told you that, I mean, like, I think there was a problem with the calculation. I don't know whether you said you were going to have a look
I
at it.
upgraded. Which calculation? You mean there was a problem with the questions or what?
Now the questions, like, I only had, I mean, like, I missed three questions and then it gives me 30. And then
But
I
I
thought it should
upgrade.
have.
I don't know what is your name, but I upgraded most students approximately 4 points.
Okay, I'm
You
Mamadou
didn't check your
Diallo.
results. Did you check your results?
Um, I didn't, there was no way, like, the form can only open once. So,
So you
the,
didn't
co-
check the results. Did you check
I,
your?
I checked it once. I checked it once.
What did you get?
30. But when I finished it, and then that was the only time that I was able to check the result again. But the form couldn't open the second time.
If you tell me your name, then I will check your result. Tell me your name.
Okay, Mamadou Diallo.
Uh, Tell me your
ID number
number. Yeah.
is 2200 162.
You got 34.
Okay, sir. Okay. Okay, sir. Thank you ever so much.
Okay. Um, Everybody happy, I think, with the results because I have already controlled because 2 questions were not evaluated correctly, and I add you the missing points. Okay.
Okay, sir. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay. I will start the class, the lecture today.
Okay, sir.
I'm opening. It's not working. Once again. Okay, last lecture we were trying to start the chapter 6 and it is interrupted because of your exam. So I'm going to continue with this chapter and then go to the chapter 7 and finish the class for today. Chapter 6 and chapter 7 is going to be introduced to you. Okay. Okay. You are able to see the slides?
Yeah, I can see it for me.
Okay. We were in chapter 6. We have already started to introduce you the price ceiling and price floor. Of course, as I said to you, because of your exam, I stopped after a few slides, and I'm going to start again with the price ceiling and price floor. As you are understanding, price ceiling is something which is the highest level of the price that is going to be offered to the market. Therefore, it is sometimes required to put some intervention to the market from the government or from the other agencies for preventing more increase or excessive increase of the prices. Due to this reason, price ceiling and price floor is very important for preventing inflation in the market. As it is introduced to you in the former lecture, price ceiling is a situation when the price charge is more than or less than the equilibrium price determined by the market forces of the demand and supply, because sometimes price ceiling can be settled below the equilibrium and sometimes above the equilibrium, and depending to this below and above positions, we are calling this as a binding or not binding position of these prices. If it is above the equilibrium, it is not binding, and if it is below the equilibrium, it is binding because it is well below the equilibrium, and sometimes it may cause some shortages because of the increase of the prices prevented results of this intervention to the market, and it is of course not good for the producers and of course sometimes for the demand for the consumers. It is creating problem, and of course some shortages is expected in the market. It has been found that the higher price ceiling are ineffective, as I mentioned to you, because it is above the equilibrium, and it is of course not very effective and not necessarily applied, but sometimes it is used. And this is done to cut the price increase, especially in necessary foodstuffs, as I said to you, for the dairy products, for the necessary foodstuffs, such as milk, water, poultry, and such products which is in everyday life we are consuming, and it is sometimes required some intervention to the market from preventing more price increase. As I mentioned to you, price ceiling is necessary for preventing the higher prices in the market, and sometimes government required to apply these prices for preventing this excessive price increase or inflationary pressure into the market, for being able to let the consumers to buy some necessary foodstuff with reasonable prices. Government imposes a price ceiling to control the maximum prices that can be charged by the suppliers for the commodity. And this is done to make commodities affordable to the general public. As I mentioned to you in my speech, it is of course necessary for letting people to able to buy some necessary foodstuff for maintaining their nutrition and their food purchasing in the markets. If the prices go up, it is not good for the consumers because they are not able to afford this much higher prices, and this is then of course sometimes creating some problems in the market and some nutrition and of course food shortages maybe realize results of these higher prices, which is not good for the economy. It may increase the prices because as much as the prices goes up, this will also create inflation in the market, and it is of course not good for the economy. Longer period application of price ceiling is of course not good because, as I said to you, higher prices or longer period of this application, this higher price ceiling or price ceiling may cause some shortages in the market, because if it is below the equilibrium, these ceiling prices, this is then, of course, as I said to you, is increasing the demand capacity, and on the other side, decreasing the production capacity, because lower prices reduce the desire of the consumer, so supplier, to produce more products to the market. And results of this, it is of course not good for the economy, because the EBI between, let's show you on the graphic, and then I will flash back again. Let's see here. As you see, if it is realized above, it is not binding, because it is already very high, and it is of course not affecting the market. But if it is below, it is affecting. As you are observing here, there will be a shortage among the supplier and demander, as it is indicated here. If the price ceiling is well below the equilibrium, let's say it is here 2, then the produced quantity is supposed to be limited with 75 units, and demand capacity is of course high, results of these lower prices, which is fixed and intervene to the market, is 125. Therefore, between this 75 and 125, there will be a shortage or lack of inefficiencies in the market, and insufficient production to the market, which is directed, is of course required to be imported from other countries, or should the price ceiling increase for balancing this economical application to the equilibrium, or towards the equilibrium. When we go back again to the price ceiling, which I am going to introduce you, price ceiling, as I mentioned to you, is of course for longer period not good for the economy, but price ceiling is a governmental tool for regulating the market, for preventing the higher prices, for reducing the higher prices, or for preventing the decrease of the prices. Therefore, price ceiling is good, especially when we are applying to the market, for preventing higher prices, for preventing this inflationary pressure to the market. And of course, the price of the goods and services cannot go higher than these regulated ceiling prices. And if is a balloon, let's suppose is a balloon floating in your house, then the balloon cannot go higher than your ceiling. Therefore, this can be a better example, or the best example, for being able to understand the price ceiling, which prevent the balloon to go to the luft, to the air, without any barriers. If there is a ceiling, then this balloon will be stopped there and will not go higher than this ceiling level. The same concept with the price, and a price ceiling cannot go higher than the price ceiling, as I mentioned to you. Where this gets tricky is that a binding price ceiling occurs below the equilibrium. As I said to you, if it is above the equilibrium, is not binding, is not affecting too much the economy. But if it is below the equilibrium, it may create some problem to the economy, because it is well below the equilibrium level, and it may cause some problem to the economy, and it is decreasing the level of this consumption and production in the market. Binding price ceiling occur, as I said to you, when this price ceiling settled below the equilibrium. And it may confusing to have a ceiling below something, but if you think it makes sense. If a balloon wants to float to 50 meters, then the ceiling must be below 50 meters in order to be effective. If the ceiling is 100 meters, the balloon will then, of course, rise 50 meters without any problem. Therefore, price ceiling is something, as I said to you, where you are limit the highest prices in the market that can be shifted or increased as much as it can allowed with this ceiling. A price ceiling does not have an effective binding market price, and it is referred to, of course, non-binding price ceiling when it is above the equilibrium, as I said to you, because it is sufficiently high enough, and there is no need to worry about this problem where it can create some shortage to the economy, or it may create some other insufficiencies or inefficiencies into the market. And price ceiling will be not binding or non-binding whenever the level of the price ceiling is greater than the equilibrium, and it is of course not affecting the market much more than the lower price level where it is settled below the equilibrium. Price ceiling that does not have an effect on the market price is referred to a non-binding price ceiling. In general, a price ceiling will be non-binding whenever the level of the price ceiling is greater than or equal to the equilibrium price that will prevail in an unregulated market structure. Therefore, if the market price is settled or set above the equilibrium, this is non-binding price ceiling, and if it is below the equilibrium, it is binding price ceiling, because, as I said to you, it may create pressure to the economy for the producer who are desiring to enlarge and increase their market. This will then, of course, prevent them to enlarge the market, because this lower prices reduce their desire to increase this production capacity, and on the other side, lower prices may, if it is necessary foodstuff, contribute to increase the demand capacity, and of course results of this creating this bilaterally shortage to the market, and it is of course in the long run not good for the economy. And if you have any question from this point of view, you may ask me. If you don't, then I will go further to illustrate you on the graphical application. As it is here illustrated, non-binding price ceiling is above the equilibrium, as it is illustrated on the graphic. If it is the equilibrium 3 or $3 for the ice cream, and the quantity demanded is 100 units, then of course price ceiling here, as you see, it is above the equilibrium, which is $4 or €4. And then this is done, of course, not much affecting the economy, because it is sufficiently high enough to enlarge the economy towards to the surplus, which is also not desired. Therefore, higher selling price is not the problem for the economy, but if it is below the equilibrium, then it is of course problem. Price ceiling occur when the government set a required price on a good or a goods at a price below equilibrium. Since the government requires that prices not rise above the price, that price binds the market for the goods. Therefore, below the equilibrium is always problem, on always creating in the long run problem, because it is below the equilibrium, and it is of course sometimes preventing the enlargement of the market, as it is illustrated here, for increasing the production operation process towards the equilibrium. And of course, on the other side, lower prices is always a promotion to the consumers for demanding more products, as it is illustrated here, which is for the ice cream at €2 is 125 units demanded, and only 75 units is produced. Therefore, the 50 units between these demand and supply is a shortage, is of course expected to be imported from the other countries for removing or solving this shortage problem in the economy. And in the long run is also a problem, as I said to you. It may create some crisis, some economical recession, because of this shortage, which is not allowing to increase the production towards the economy, because at that price level, most of the producers may jump up to the other markets or to the other other products, production operation, and will not, of course, enlarge these products in the market. And this will then, of course, creating a shortage and, of course, economical problem to the economy. Government imposes price ceiling in order to keep the price of some necessary foodstuffs or goods and services affordable. For example, in 2005, during Hurricane Katrina, the price of bottled water increased above $5 per gallon. As a result, many people called for price controls on bottled water to prevent the price from rising too high. Therefore, if it is price ceiling necessary for preventing such increased results of shortage of the production or shortage of such a hurricane, then the government should put the price ceiling below the equilibrium, below the existing market price, for being able to let the people to buy this product sufficiently without any problem, because as you know, water is a necessary foodstuff and it should be affordable for the consumers. In the short run, from supply side, constructing house and buildings are not affected from price changes because house construction takes time. Apartments to rent cannot adjust quickly as market conditions change. And from supply side, from demand side, number of people searching for housing may not be highly responsive to rents. People take time to adjust their housing arrangements. Therefore, the short-run supply and demand for housing are relatively inelastic. Due to this reason, from supply side, for controlling the market, price ceiling must be carefully treated. Let's see on the graphically, if the supply side is restricted, and as you are observing here, it is a vertical line, is not effective from the price changes. There is inelastic relation between the price and, of course, the offer. And as you see, the demand is, of course, heavily affected, as you are observing here. But if the prices is controlled and fixed below the equilibrium, where the supply is not affected from the price changes, then, of course, there will be a shortage in the economy, as you are observing here. And this is then, of course, not good for the economy. It must be allowing the producers for enlarging and increasing the market. And on the other side, it must allow the consumer for enjoying to buy the products or rent these houses with a reasonable prices. If it is well below, there will be too much demand to these products. As you are observing in auctions is also similarly. If the price is well below the desired level, too many people want to buy this product or this article. Therefore, price must be reasonable given to the market for the products, for being able to control this shortage problem, for being able to control and, of course, supply the produced goods and services reasonable to the market, because lower prices is also a problem, because most of the producers or suppliers will not maintain or continue to produce in this market if the price level is well below the equilibrium. The long run story is very different, because the buyers and sellers of rental housing respond more to market conditions as time passes on the supply side, and low rents reduce house constructions and building new apartments. And on the demand side, low rent encourages people to find their own apartments without any problem, because the price which is offered is acceptable. Therefore, both supply and demand are more elastic in the long run, as it is illustrated in this graphic. When you are looking to this supply and demand curve, which is more flatter to the x-axis for the apartment production and construction, and the rental price level is becoming elastic, results of this flatter supply and, of course, demand position, then, of course, market will then, of course, will have problem if the intervention is well below the market which is offered to the produce to the consumers. As you see, there is a huge amount of shortage when the supply and demand is more elastic, and the price is of course set well below the equilibrium. There is a considerable shortage and insufficiencies in the market. Let's consider the house rent market. In the given graph, a price of P, which is €3, has been determined as the equilibrium price with the government or with the quantity produced, 30 units, homes or constructed houses from the market. Now the government determined a price ceiling of product which is €2. Of course, this is a scenario and we are using always simplest numbers, and at this rate there is a shortage. Demand will be then of course 40 units and the supply is only 20 units. Therefore, the long run which is created here, as you are observing here, the shortage will be realized here between 40 and 20, and it will then of course creating this rent but not sufficiently covered by the suppliers, and this is then of course rising the black market and of course increasing the rents towards to the equilibrium. As you are observing here, the scenario which is mentioned before is illustrated on the graphic. When the price is settled below the equilibrium, which is in equilibrium should be $3 or €3, then the government fixed the price at $2 or €2, and as you see, the produced goods or houses is limited with 20 units, and produced houses or constructed houses is going to be 40 units, and the shortage is becoming 20 units, and it should be imported, that it should be enlarged, which is in the construction technology not possible. It is a long run process, and therefore this will then create black market for the housing market, for the construction sectors, and the house prices will then, or rent will go very high because of this limited offer from the suppliers, results of this lower price ceiling. This is binding effect of the construction sector. Effects of the price ceiling on the gasoline, or so-called petroleum. A binding price ceiling creates shortage, as I mentioned to you, because you are already observed on the construction sector, where the houses limited with 20 units, and of course expected demand is 40 units, and between these differences 20 units is creating shortage. And in construction sector it is a shortage, and it is of course causing some black market in the construction, because housing sector cannot be easily imported. It can be constructed domestically, and it should be in a long run realized process, and if the prices is very sufficiently low, then this will then of course reduce this construction apartments or housing or villas to enlarge and increase this demand from the consumers. Let's look this binding effect of the petroleum. If there is a higher demand than supply, we call this shortage, and this is then of course binding effect of the price ceiling. And results of this is of course happens in the USA. The gasoline shortage, which is observed in 1970s, and non-pricing ratio is of course given for long lines, and discrimination by the sellers is observed during this period of time, where the demand was very high and of course supply not sufficiently realized. In 1973, the OPEC raised the price of crude oil in world markets, and because of crude oil is the major input used to make gasoline, the higher oil price reduced the supply of gasoline. And what was responsible for the long gasoline or gas pipes? The economists blame governments, regulations that limit the pricing, oil companies, and could charge for gasoline. And this is then, of course, problem for the economy because this is the shortage. And results of this lines at the gas pumps observed, which is not desired scenarios and, of course, pictures in the economy. We don't like such a lines, such a queues in the economy. We want that the producer sufficiently produce with a reasonable price to the market, and we want to buy reasonable price and buy product with reasonable price and reasonable quantity. Therefore, queues or lines at the gas pumps or the other markets is not desired in the economy. This is black market. This is, of course, the recession, and this is, of course, not good for the economy. Price ceiling on gas line is not binding if it is above the equilibrium, as I said to you, similarly to the former examples. As you are observing here, if it is above the equilibrium, which is sufficiently allow the producer to enlarge their market, and on the other side, such higher price ceiling will not be desired by the producers for for their products, and results of this market will be realized below this higher price ceiling, and probably in the equilibrium level, it is expected to be realized. As you are observing here, when this price ceiling is high and, of course, reducing the market because of these higher prices, as I said to you, it is expected to become reduced to the equilibrium level, or it can reduce the continuously produced market, and then supply will become reduced, and this will then become and increase the price level more higher. Therefore, we have to determine the expected outcome of this price ceiling, as it is illustrated here. It is sometimes opposite happen and shift the prices towards to the higher level results of this price ceiling, which is causing some, of course, shortages at the end of the day. As you are observing here, the price ceiling becomes binding because of this market structure, results of this reduction on the demand, because nobody wants to buy at that level, at that price, and this will then shift the demand, shift the supply more upper and reduce the supply towards to the Q2, which is not illustrated here, and of course the price will become more higher, which is P2, and of course if there is a sufficient demand, this will maintain. If there isn't, it is expected that seasonal deviation of this market will reduce the price towards the equilibrium again at the expected level to the P1 and Q1, because higher prices and higher quantity which is demanded will not always responding when the prices is very high. The demand is expected to become lower level. Therefore, the supply is not going to maintain at that level, and this is an, of course, surplus for the economy. Therefore, sometimes this price ceiling may cause also shortage if it is in the upper or level of the equilibrium realized. Therefore, we have to follow up the expectations of the, of course, the results of this application of the policy. Then we will then determine what to do. As it is indicated here, such higher prices as observed in the price ceiling for the gasoline, which is increased and reduced, of course, the market and cause some shortage, is also a problem. Therefore, pipelines or pumps will always become too much consumers, and the queues in these gas pump lines or pumps, gas petroleum stations becomes very high, results of these higher prices. But at the end of the day, this will then cause some shortage, because people who are desiring at that level, as you see, is reduced. The price floor is, of course, the opposite of the price ceiling. Now we are jumping to the other side of the price control, because price ceiling is the highest price level, and price floor is the lowest price, which is going to be fixed by the government. Sometimes some product, especially for the cereals, governments may prefer to fix the prices for preventing not reducing the prices well below the desired level, for securing the production. Sometimes producers enlarging their production and increasing the surplus or increasing the overproduction, but the government, of course, overproduction or surplus always causing some price reduction and reduce the prices well below the equilibrium, and the governments always must secure the prices below any price floor to not causing some damage or profit loss to the producers, because lower prices and higher prices bilaterally affecting the economy, causing some inflationary or deflationary period, and it is not good for the economy because both of them causing too much to the economy. Price floor is a situation when the price charge is more than or less than the equilibrium price determined by the market forces of demand and supply. By observations, it has been found that lower prices are ineffective. Now is the opposite. If the price floor is well below the equilibrium, is not binding because it is already very low, and this is not affecting the economy too much. But if it is high, if the price floor is very high, not letting the prices to reduce well below towards to the equilibrium, if it is above the equilibrium, then this will then create again problem to the economy because it has a binding effect to the economy. Therefore, we have to follow up these problems very carefully, and the governmental policies must be carefully treated. Results of this elasticity problem in the market to observe what the demand is responding this price floor, and then determine the price for towards to the equilibrium or below the equilibrium for not creating any problem to the economy. And minimum wage is also affected with this price floor, as you are understanding, because price floor, if it is well below the equilibrium, is a problem because it may then create problem for the salaries, which is below the equilibrium, creating lower wages, lower salaries, and lower income. And if it is above the equilibrium, which is very high, then this will then again shifting the minimum wage to the higher level, creating more maybe salaries or causing some higher wages. But on the other side, higher wages may cause some unemployment, because if the price level is very high and the wages is high, minimum wage is very high, then this will then create some problem to the economy because it is not allowing to employ so many people which is not working. Therefore, price floor is also very important for the economy because it is affecting the whole system as a multiplier effect. You are observing changing the most of the parameters in the economy, price changing, inflation, wages, salaries, income, market, consumption, production, all will become affected results of this price control. Therefore, pricing and the price system, price floor, price ceiling, intervention to the market, these are all very important to the economy, and it should be carefully treated. And the people who are follow up this must be control the elasticity of these products, and accordingly to these changes to the market must balance these prices, results of these policies. Price floor leads to a lesser number of workers, as I said to you, and in case of equilibrium wages, this is of course illustrated here as you are observing here. If the price floor is above the equilibrium, then this is of course not very effectively affecting the economy. Effectively affecting because it has a binding effect and it is very high, and you are not able to reduce the prices for letting the consumer to enjoy to buy, because you see the demand is very low here and supply is very high, and there is 20 units surplus in the economy because results of this higher prices floor, which is fixed by the government. The consumption is reduced to 20 units and production is increased to 40 units, and it is of course very high, higher than the equilibrium, which is $3 and 30 units is expected, the equilibrium units. And this is not good for the economy because it's causing surplus or overproduction to the market. If you are having any question, please do not hesitate to ask me. If you don't have any question, I will go further. Okay. Yes, please. Obilade Ganiyatu. You have question? If you don't have, I will go further. I have already mentioned this. We have 20 units, of course, surplus and workers which is going to be demanded or employed, probably not working anymore. This is the problem for the economy. Then, of course, as it is indicated here, some workers will be laid off. Price ceiling prevent a price from rising above certain level. When a price ceiling is set below the equilibrium price, quantity demanded will exceed quantity supplied and excess demand or shortage will result. And price floor against to this prevent a price from falling price below a certain level, and when a price floor is set above the equilibrium, quantity supply will exceed quantity demanded, and this is then of course causing some surplus, and as I said to you, it may create some shortage to the economy. And price floor is the government which imposes a price floor. There will be two important outcomes. Price floor is not binding if set below the equilibrium price, and the price floor is binding if set above the equilibrium price, leading to a surplus, and surplus is also not good for the economy, as it is not good for the shortage in the price ceiling either. And as it is illustrated here, you are observing there is an equilibrium level where the wages and the quantity employed and supplied is in the equilibrium. Labor supplied by the employee and labor demanded by the employer is fixed here and becomes the equilibrium position. And as you are observing here, when the minimum wage is high, fixed, probably the floor price is also high, and results of this higher wages, there will be a surplus in the economy, and the people who are expecting to become employed will not enjoy to do this because higher prices causing higher minimum wage, and this then of course causing some unemployment and laid off of the labor force is expected. Therefore, we have to find the reasonable prices for the economy for maintaining a sustainable model to the system. And as you are observing here, we have the equilibrium without tax. We are here concentrating now the impact of the tax, because either the tax is also playing the similar role in the system, or this fixing or intervene to the market and fixing the prices to the certain level is also causing some problem. But of course, tax, which is a burden on the consumers and of course burden on the taxpayers, so-called the suppliers also, and consumers who are able to buy these products are not enjoying when the price is very high fixed because of this tax. Let's see here, we have the price without tax. And now we are supposing a tax on buyers shift the demand curve downward, because tax on the income is of course as a burden for the consumers, and it is reducing the purchasing power of the consumers. As you are observing here, The brown line is the consumer demand, which is reduced results of this tax. As you observe here, the demand shifted lower level because the prices shifted higher level. 3.3 is the 10% tax is applied to the system, and as you are observing here, 10% tax is causing some reduction, some 10% reduction to the consumption, to the economy from 100 to 90. Do you have any question, please? You don't have any question? You are understanding everything? Yes or no? Do you hear me? Or you sleeping? Isa, you are here? Abenazir?
Yes, sir.
I'm happy to hear somebody. Ali Isa is here. Nobody is here, or you are sleeping? I think
We are here, sir. We are here.
you are here. Okay. You are understand. You are following. You are understanding. Is okay. Am I faster or is okay?
It's okay, sir.
Yes,
it's okay. You are understanding. You are able to follow.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. As you are observing here, there is of course problem when the tax is in the system because it is reducing the purchasing power of the consumers and it is creating problem to the system. Therefore, tax is a burden to the consumers and in tax is a profit loss for the supplier either. And
okay, sorry, I have a question, please.
Yes, please.
Yeah, what I mean, like, I want to ask, like, what are some of the measures the government take to avoid these sort of problems, like besides subsidy?
Subsidizing. Besides subsidy, you mean besides taxing, besides offering some tax for enlarging the economy, or?
Yeah, I mean, like, is subsidy the only thing like government do to avoid, I mean, these sort of problems?
Subsidy is something different, actually. We are talking about the intervention to the market. This is not subsidy. This is only letting the consumer to have this price at that level and not that much. Subsidy is something different. Subsidy is something that government fixed the floor price, let's say at $2, and if the market price is $3, says I'm going to give you $1 more for subsidizing you, for subventing you. You are understanding? This is subvention. This will be given by the government to the producer for not losing the profit and not losing the market. And if it is not affordable for the producer for reducing the prices to $2 from $3 to $2, then this will be subsidized by the government for letting the producer to maintain their production. This is subsidies, but intervention to the market is something different, which is fixed at $2 and not giving anything. I am telling you as a government, you are not allowed to increase your prices to $3 because in the liberal economy, we are in the free market and everybody, invisible hand, will determine the prices. The supplier and the demanders, offers and suppliers, and of course, and the buyers will be meet and then determine the prices. If there is more demand than supply, the price is expected to go high. If there is less demand, then the price will be reduced. And this is how it is realized. And if there is a reduction in the market, then there is a intervention to the market by the government. And it says if it is cereals products, rye, barley, wheat, that may say for the bread production, isn't it? For the meal productions, may say I don't want to reduce the prices below $2, and this is the floor price. You understand? And the floor price should be $2. Below this, it is not allowed. Or government may observe that the prices goes up, and it says above $3 or 3.50, I am fixing the selling price 3.50, and I don't want to see the prices above this. This is then the selling price. where it is allowing the producer to enlarge and increase their production. This is how it is working. Therefore, price ceiling, whether it is fixed below the equilibrium or above the equilibrium, bilaterally affecting. If it is below the equilibrium, it is not binding. If it is above the equilibrium, it is binding. And similarly, ceiling, if it is below the equilibrium, it is binding. And if it is above the equilibrium, it is not binding. Therefore, these things are heavily affecting and changing the market results of these changes in the system. I hope you are understanding. If you don't understand, please ask me again, then I will explain you the part you didn't understand. You have question, Mamadou? Diallo?
No, it's clear, sir.
Okay. As it is observed here, there is price sellers receive for the producer, which is 2.80 because of tax, reduce it, isn't it? And for the consumers, it is shifted. As much as this is realized, shifting the price to the upper level and reducing the consumption, reducing the demand capacity, as it is illustrated with the brown line. And this is not good for the economy. As you are observing, tax is a burden for the consumers and, of course, for the taxpayers who are going to enjoy to shop will reduce their production consumption capacity. And on the other side, producers who are wishing to sell at $3, and if there is a 10% tax, this will then reduce their profit well below their expected profit level, and this is then of course not good for the both sides. But so government must use this tax policy for circulating the public services. Therefore, tax is not a burden. Tax is a necessary antidote in the system, and it should be paid for the producers, for the consumers, because we are not all working the whole life. There is a pension scheme, there is hospitals, there is some social aspect of the economy and social economical aspects, and it should be supported because government constructing roads, constructing schools, hospitals, some park areas, some other leisure places, some other services, and of course public services offered must be also circulated, and of course is required some capital and reserve, and this is of course mostly used with these fiscal policies, with the tax policies, and this tax of course necessary to the governmental applications and governmental services. We have here another application. As you are observing, without tax, again we have the equilibrium at 3, and of course ice cream is 1 unit at $3, and then we are expecting here then the tax on sellers shift the supply curve upward and reduce it, as you are observing here, because now the tax on seller is applied and shifting of course again the supply curve to the upward, which is of course causing some reduction, isn't it? As you observe here, the amount of 50 euro, 50 cents is of course a burden.
Yes.
Yes, please. Then equilibrium tax is of course shifted 3.3, but now the supply side is affected heavily, but also the producer is also affected, as I have shown to you. Bilaterally, tax is affecting both parties. Yes, please. Yes. I'm listening.
Hello?
Yes, yes. Abibatu. I'm listening you.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Yes. Turay. You want to ask me something? Do you have question?
No, sir.
No?
Sir.
Okay. If you don't understand, please don't hesitate to ask me question.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Okay. Yes, the opposite case we are illustrating here, because tax can be applied to the producers, and of course it can be applied to the suppliers, consumers, and both parties affected differently. And as it is illustrated here, when the tax is in the supplier side, it is also reducing the supply and shifting the supply curve upward and reduce it towards to the price. And this is then of course not good for the economy either. Of course, tax must be paid. We can say we are not against this, but it is of course must be reasonable. The wages without tax, now we are looking to the wages, the salaries, how it is going to be affected. Then the labor supply and labor demand is illustrated here. There is quantity of labor which is employment is on the x-axis, and wages on the vertical y-axis. Then wage firm pay and wage worker receive, and wages is illustrated here is of course given to you, supposed to be then affected with the taxes. Let's look here to understand of course this tax and everything in the system, how it is going to be reacted, how it is affecting and changing the market. We have to illustrate the cobweb. We have to concentrate to the elasticity problem in the system, because the position of the supply and demand is very heavily affecting and changing the system, as you are observing, even whether it is tax or the price changes, results of this price floor and price ceiling, both affecting and changing the supply and demand. And as you are observing here, we are illustrating here the supply and demand, and here we are supposing there is equal elasticity between supply and demand, and the cobweb, we are calling this cobweb spider nets, because it's just like a spider network. And as you are observing here, if this is equally realized, the price changes up and down, from up and down movements for the seasonal deviation, the price will shift it to the equilibrium. Therefore, there will be no problem with this kind of application if the supply elasticity and of course demand elasticity is of course unit, and there is no problem, there is no differences between this elasticity. This will then affect the equilibrium and bring the economy to the equilibrium without any problem, and it is of course in the balance to the system. It will bring the balance to the economy. Of course, cobweb theorem is developed by the Ezekiel in 1938, and later of course developed by Caldo. Let's look up this. The cobweb theorem stems from a simple dynamic model of cyclical demand, which involves time lag between the response of production and change in price, most often seen in sector of agriculture. Therefore, agricultural sector is very heavily affected these price changes, especially the seasonal price changes from one season to another season. We are understanding some producers, if the potato price, as you are observing last year, goes up, then the producer jump to this sector and try to enlarge this production and become more heavily production in this sector and increase this production capacity. And as you see now, the potato price is reduced to 2 Turkish lira to 4 Turkish lira. Therefore, it is dependent these price changes. If the prices in one season goes up, then the demand and of course the production will heavily affected. If the price goes up, demand is expected to reduce, and of course production is expected to be increased for the next season. Therefore, this seasonal deviation, depending to this price changes, affected from the elasticity, whether it is elastic demand or inelastic demand, luxurious goods, necessary goods, inferior goods. We have to control this position of the demand and supply, and accordingly to this supply and demand elasticity, we are determining the production, and of course the deviation of the market will then give some clue and hints to the economy or to the experts for determining its position, whether we have to intervene to the market or we have to let the market not intervening and observing whether it is going towards to the equilibrium or moving away to the equilibrium. Therefore, this cobweb theorem is very helpful for understanding this supply of produced goods and services and demand which is consumed by the consumers. As I said to you, cobweb theory is very important, and it is assumed the demand for goods is decreasing function of its current price and supply is increasing function of last year price, because demand is dependent to the current price. When the price go down, everybody enjoy to buy. In the seasonal discounts, we are enjoying to shop. And if the price go down, of course, the seasonal deviation affected, and of course, next year's production probably will be reduced on. If the price goes up, the next year production will be affected and probably will be enlarged. Results of this price changes in the system. Therefore, demand is the decreasing function of current price, and supply curve or supply equation is the increasing function of the last year price, because it is dependent, heavily dependent to the former year prices or former season prices, and it takes time, as you are understanding, for producing something, planting, harvesting, and marketing. It is of course a procedure, and it needs some time. Therefore, it is very important for being able to understand this time-dependent production and of course the demand, which is only dependent to the price changes in the current price in the current period of time. And especially this happens in agricultural production, as I said to you, because we are enjoying too much and we are consuming too much agricultural products, because most of our nutrition is coming from the agricultural sector. Husbandries, everything is of course very dependent to the agricultural applications, and the price of agricultural products mostly has an elastic demand and not durable, because it is not very lasting products and need to be sold in a short period of time, usually in 1 week, in 2 weeks, in one period of time, let's say in 3 weeks or 2 months, maximum 3 months, it should be disposed. Or if it is in, of course, in the manufactured sector, can be durable for 1 year, maybe maximum 2 years, but not like television, not like industrial products, which can be longer than 1 year to longer periods, 5 years, 10 years can be, or 20 years, even if it is in the second-hand position, let's say auto, cars industry we are talking about, or mobile industries, you can sell it in 3 years, in 4 years, in 5 years, in 10 years, no problem. It depends your desire and demand capacity and your desire. Therefore, this is very important to know that this production is last year's function, and or supply curve or supply function is last year price dependent, and the demand is current year price dependent. If demand is more elastic, the difference in price changes between first year product price and the second year product price is increasingly decreased. The output and the price tend to approach to the equilibrium position. This has also meant that the slope of the demand curve is smaller than the slope of the supply curve. As it is illustrated here, I will show the graphical illustration, but I just want to put you these percentage changes in price to percentage change in the quantity. For the supply slope of the demand is less than, if it is less than percentage change of the price and percentage change of the quantity for the supply curve, if it is below for the demand, then this is then of course more elastic. And for the supply curve is more elastic than the demand curve, where the absolute slope of the supply curve is less than the demand curve, then output and price tend to move further away from the equilibrium because of the positions of the supply and demand. You will understand, I will show you the graphical illustrations, I will show you the positions of the supply and demand, and you will understand better how it is going to affect and change it. And therefore, the slope of the demand curve is expected to greater than the slope of the supply curve, which means the price and output tend to move further from the equilibrium. Therefore, if we are putting this proportional equation, P2 multiplied P1 divided to Q1 multiplied Q2, or the difference, will be smaller than PO multiplied P1 divided to Q1 Q2. Is the slope of the supply curve supposed to be greater than the slope of the demand curve? This is then, of course, supply curve is supposed to be more elastic. Then the application is given here. Demand is more elastic. As you are observing here, the bold illustrated demand curve is supposed to be more elastic. If the demand curve is more elastic, which means flatter to the horizontal or becomes more parallel to the horizontal, then it will direct, which means price is elastic for the demand. As much as the demand curve become more elastic, this will then of course means it is bringing the market to the equilibrium. As you are observing here, if you draw through line, the one is more vertical, let's say supply curve is more vertical and demand curve is more elastic, which is more parallel to the x-axis, to the Q, then this will, if you start to make the spider nets, you will see it goes towards to the origin. It will go towards to the equilibrium position. As you see here, it is started from PO or P0, and then it goes to P1, and then after the second deviation or second seasonal deviation, it goes to the P2, which is approaching to the equilibrium position. This is then, of course, the demand elasticity, results of this demand elasticity, which is bringing the market to the equilibrium. And the other side, when we are looking to the supply side, if the supply is more elastic here on the second curve, on the figure 2, there is another graphical illustration where the supply is now more bold written or illustrated, and the demand is more vertical, and supply is here more parallel or horizontal. And results of this position of the supply, which is more elastic, the price of the supply curve is more elastic, supply is becoming more elastic, results of this flatter position. Then when we are starting from P0 to go to P1 and then P2, as you are observing the seasonal deviation of the price, it is bringing or moving away from the equilibrium and bringing the market, of course, not to the equilibrium, but going away from the equilibrium. Therefore, if any product is demand elastic, then we are understanding this will bring the market to the equilibrium. And if the supply is more elastic, then this will create problem to the economy, and it should create problem, and it should be intervene to the market. The government should intervene to the market, to the system, to this sector, for bringing the market to the equilibrium. Because if no intervention is realized here, as you are observing, the price will shift very high and the market will go away from the equilibrium, and it is not good for the economy. This is not good for the system, because this is creating inflation, this is creating shortage to the economy, this is creating surplus to the economy, because seasonal deviation once brings surplus, once brings shortage. As you see here, at P2 level, there is shortage, At P1 level, there is a surplus. Therefore, the supply is price elastic, and if the supply is more elastic, market intervention is expected. You should intervene to the market. Either you are going to subsidize the producer, or you are going to give direct payments, or some other instruments such as price floor, price ceiling must be applied. The price intervention must be applied to the system for preventing this price stagnation in the market, because it is not good for the economy. I hope you are understanding these illustrations. If you don't understand, please ask me. And at the third graphic, as it is illustrated here, the market is in same elasticity because supply is same as the demand elasticity. Therefore, the supply price and the demand price elasticity is becoming unique, and they are, of course, unitary level moving, and there is no problem to the system. The system is this deviation, and of course, moving on the parallel lines, and there will be no problem to the economy if there is similar elasticity, which is of course not always expected. This is somehow is only a scenario. It's not possible to expect such deviation where the supply and demand is same or having same elasticity in the market. Do you have any question? I think you are understanding. Then I go to the tax effect again with the elasticity that you are going to see how it is affecting. We are supposing elastic supply and inelastic demand. As you are observing here, demand is more vertical and supply is more horizontal here. And as you see, results of this, when you go to the back, the former example which I have given to you, the tag was almost unitary. But here, as you see, there is a considerable, huge amount of tax because, as I said to you here, look here, if the demand is elastic, it goes to equilibrium. If the supply is elastic, then it moves away. Therefore, demand here, as you see, demand here is inelastic. Supply here is elastic. What does it mean? This will move away. The supply elasticity moves, cause some problem because it will direct the equilibrium to the away. It's not going to the equilibrium. It is moving away to the equilibrium. Therefore, intervention is expected. As you are observing here, there is a huge amount of tax is applied here for the tax because the demand is inelastic and supply is elastic. And results of this, when the supply is more elastic than demand, then this will then, of course, causing some problem. It is, of course, the tax will fall more heavily on consumers, isn't it? Because this tax is, of course, reducing the consumption capacity, and this tax is, of course, not good for the economy. It is causing too much to the supplier either. Price buyers pay much here, as you are observing, than the producers. You see the producer paying less, but the buyers paying much, because when you look to the equilibrium intersection point, above the equilibrium, the tax goes to the buyers, and below the equilibrium, the tax goes to the consumers. And results of this tax application, the buyer will be suffering here of this inelastic demand position, where the elastic is becoming more elastic, where the supply is becoming more elastic. And then, of course, tax is very high, very huge here, and the consumer will pay much tax than the producer here, because it is position of the elasticity for the supply is higher than the demand. If you don't have any question, I will go further. Inelastic Inelastic supply, now the opposite, and elastic demand. Let's see again now. When the supply is more elastic here, supply is more inelastic here. When the demand is elastic here, you see now the taxpayer is the producers. They are paying more tax than the consumers, than the demander. Therefore, the tax which is going to be paid by the producer is higher than the consumer here. And this is then the reason why we don't like inelastic demand, because inelastic demand is always causing problem to the social economical application. And results of this, then we have to determine which party is going to be supported or should be subsidized, because sometimes we are putting the tax to the products, but we don't see who is going to get the burden on this tax. And mostly the taxpayer is supposed to be the producers, and they are getting supplied, they are getting subsidized. As Mamadou Diallo asked me, now the subsidy here should be given to the producer because of supply position, which is inelastic. But in the former example, where the demand is more inelastic, it should be subsidized by the government for the consumers, because consumers getting the burden of this tax heavily. Yes, please. Do you have any question? Do you have question? You are understanding me? You don't have any question? You are happy, enjoying?
Yes, sir.
Okay, shall I have to go on? Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. So in the exam, I will ask you such questions. If it is supply more elastic or demand elastic, what will be the tax? Who is going to burden the tax? Such questions, interpretations, I will ask you. Maybe I will put you some numbers, but for the first year economic students, I don't put calculations too much, because you are in the theory, you are learning economics, and I want to get your knowledge from the economical aspect, if the theory is good or not. Okay, as I said to you, the revenue is maximized at unit elasticity, which is, of course, when the elasticity, absolute elasticity, is equal to 1. And when that happens, demand is said to be unit elastic, which is unit elastic is 1. And of course, total revenue reaches the maximum when the demand is unit elastic, where the delta Q over Q is equal to delta P over delta P, which is the unitary elasticity is realized at 1. And then if the firm can charge only a single price to all buyers, it must balance the additional quantity sold due to a lower price and the lower revenue from each unit sold. Then if the percentage change in quantity sold is greater than the percentage change in price, the total revenue will increase when a lower price is charged. When that happens, demand is said to be elastic. And as you are understanding, elastic demand is supposed to be more than 1. And inelastic demand is less than 1, and unitary elastic is 1. Then and the elasticity of demand has an absolute value greater than 1. For example, a 10% price decrease leading to a 20% quantity increase will give you an elasticity greater than 1. Any further price decrease beyond the maximum total revenue point will lead to lower revenue, because the percentage change in quantity will be smaller than the percentage change in price. When that happens, demand is said to be inelastic, which is less than 1. Between 0 and 1 is supposed to be inelastic demand, and total revenue decrease as percentage decrease when the demand is inelastic. This means delta Q over Q is less than delta P over P, which means elasticity of demand is less than absolute value of 1. Because as you are understanding, we are talking always the negative numbers. The negative numbers is going to be considered when it is absolutely estimated. We are giving a linear equation here for this example. QD is equal to A minus BP, and the elasticity is supposed to be minus B P over Q, where B is delta Q over delta P. You know this. B is the slope of this curve, slope of this linear curve, and results of this when the elasticity is in the subject, then we are taking only the B for delta Q over delta P, because delta Q over delta P is the derivation of this curve. Therefore, we know that derivation of this curve will be B, isn't it? When you know some derivation, then it is, of course, very easily estimated. Then the Q is equal to P over Q multiplied delta Q over delta P. Then, of course, suppose P is 0.7, Q is 70, and elasticity of price for the demand curve is supposed to be minus 0.15. And when we are going to request, I think it stopped. I have to, let me check if it is working. I have to upload again because the paper quit. Sometimes this happens. If you wait a little bit, I'm going to explain you the example. It's coming. Okay, I will go to the example. I will go to this example if you wait. I'm coming. I'm coming. I'm coming to this example, the elasticity example. Okay. Okay. Okay, it goes a little bit slowly because we have too many things to do. We had too many things. Okay, we were here. So you got these slides? You got the slides? This question?
Yeah,
Yes.
the slides are here.
Okay. Suppose P is 0.7, Q is 70, and elasticity of supply, sorry, elasticity of demand for price is minus 0.55. Then we are going to find the intercept A and B. We have to find the slope of this line equation B and the intercept A. Then what we have to do, we have to put this equation first in this form, as you are understanding, because you know you're going to inverse position of this equation, and you will find the B first, which is 55. Do you have problem with this? Because the elasticity equation is minus B P over Q. We have these numbers. We have the elasticity, we have the Q, and we have the P. We put there, and we are going to find the B, which is going to be calculated by the mathematical expressions you are going to transfer to the other side the Q and P, and then you will find B, which is 55. You have problem with this? I think you know how it is going to be, isn't it? Do you have problem with this?
No.
Okay, then we have to put this B into the equation because we are going to calculate A now, because we have the Q, we have now the B, and we have the P. When you're going to put this to the equation, then you will get A, because QD is equal to A minus BP, and when you are going to subtract BP to the other side of the equation, then you will get A is equal to A plus BP, isn't it? Then you are going to get 70 plus 55 multiplied 0.7, which is 108.5. Then this is then, of course, QD. Then you are finding this equation for the demand, which is 108.5 minus 55P. This is then the equation which is given. And then if you give the P, if you put the P there, then you will draw this equation, and you will draw the graphical illustration of this example if it is required to you. Let's go to the constant elasticity of curve for finding the coefficients. Now we have, of course, QD A multiplied P, where the elasticity is, of course, power of P. You have any question? No. Okay, now again we have this similar example.
Yeah.
P is equal to 0.7, Q is equal to 70, and elasticity is minus 0.55. Then we are going to find again A now, which is given in the equation, where it is A is supposed to be equal to Q multiplied P minus elasticity, power of elasticity, which is 1 over P, isn't it? Then you are going to find this, then A is 70, 0.7 multiplied 0.7 power of 0.55, then will gives you, of course, when you are going to get the negative form, will give you then 57.53, which is the A, the intercept. Therefore, then you have the equation QD 57.53 multiplied price is minus 0.55. This is then the equation. Okay? You got it? Do you have a problem with this, or is okay?
It's okay.
Okay, good. Then exercise another one. Consider the market for bicycle. The demand is given P is equal to minus 1.5 QD plus 60. Suppose that the price change from 50 to 30 using the standard percentage change formula. Point method, what is the price elasticity of demand? We are using point method, which is, of course, very easily QD over Q over delta Q over Q divided to delta P over P, or delta Q over delta P multiplied P over Q. Here we are going to use this delta Q over Q, and delta P over P is going to be divided each other. Therefore, 20 minus 30 divided to 30, and 30 minus 50 divided to 50, then will gives you 1.3 for the point elasticity, which is going to be used by the standard elasticity formula. And if we are going to use this for finding the midpoint formula, as you are understanding, midpoint formula is required to finding the 20 minus 30 dividing to 20 minus 30 divided to 2, and of course 30 minus 50, it should be, of course, 2 divided, the denominator should be divided to 2 also. 20 plus 30 divided to, it should be 25. You are understand, because I forget to put the 2 here. And then for the price, 30 minus 50 divided to 30 plus 50 divided to 2 will gives you, of course, 3 over 5 for the arc elasticity, so-called. The midpoint formula is also arc elasticity. You have understood? You got this example. In the denominator, I have to put also 20 plus 30 divided 2, because in the midpoint, you are always getting the half of this summation. 20 plus 30 divided 2 will be 25. Therefore, you are going to divide it this 20 minus 30 divided 25, and 30 minus 50 divided 45 over 2 is 22.5. Then you will get the answer at 3.5. Okay, because 2, I missed the 2 dividing this denominator 2. Denominator should be divided to 2 for the both sides. Okay. And when price is 15, what is the, I will correct this because I missed 2 there. I will show you once again after the class. I will put to the system, then you will see it how it is. And when P is 15, what is the price elasticity of demand using the point method? We are going to use the point method is the normal elasticity, and the arc method is the midpoint formula. Is it elastic or inelastic? At P15, if the price goes up, does the total revenue increase, decrease, or stay intact? We can use the formula elasticity 1 over slope multiplied P over Q, because the elasticity formula is this one. Using the demand equation, we can get this. Of course, QD is 30. When price is 15, then of course we are using again elasticity 1 over, it is not very clearly written in absolute term, 15 minus 1.5 multiplied 15 over 30, then this will give you 1 over 3. This is then the elasticity, okay, because slope must be taken in the absolute term. And the elasticity here is supposed to be 1 over 3 is less than 1, then the elasticity is supposed to be inelastic, because if it is less than 1, in absolute terms, we are calling this elasticity is inelastic. Therefore, when the price goes up, the total revenue is supposed to be increases for this example again. And of course, I was thinking to go to the next chapter, to chapter 7. Unfortunately, today again, we only finished the chapter 6. Next lecture, I will start to calculate the surpluses, the consumer surplus, producer surplus. Of course, I will try to show you first the basic formula, basic knowledge, and simplest calculation. And if we had time to go further, then I will give you the integration of this, but I think this will be in the second year topic. This year, I will give you the simplest calculation of the consumer surplus, producer surplus, how you are going to estimate, and how you are going to mess them in the graphical illustration. Therefore, today's class is going to be finished for your preferences, because we don't have enough time. I think this is enough for today. And next lecture, I will jump to the surplus. An estimation of the surplus for the producer and for the consumer will be given to you. If you don't have any question, I will finish this class for today. Do you have any question, or if you don't have, let me. Okay, then wish you happy weekend. Okay, enjoy your weekend.
Same to you, sir.
Okay, sir. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you. Bye.
I want to ask something, sir.
Yes, please. I'm listening.
Can you always try to fix a live class, so we can be coming to live class? Because sometimes I understand much better in the live class.
Well, I can do it, but most of the students are online, and it is of course creating problem, because in the school, in the university, the connection is not good. And last lecture that I have done, most of the students are not able to understand because it was always interrupted. You are understanding? Therefore, yes, at home, connection is better. I am telling them that they should improve the connection. Then this will then better adapt it to the other students who are not attending live classes. Therefore, if they are going to fix this problem, I will come to the university, and of course, I will do some application better. Let's see if they are going to improve it. Maybe after the new year, I will come to the class and do some exercises, do some applications for you. Don't worry.
All
Thank
right,
you
sir.
very much for you joining this class. I hope you are attending to the next class with better participants. See you next week. Bye-bye.
See you.